Thank you, Carly. A dangerous trend on TikTok is encouraging people to not use sunscreen.
I can't believe that TikTok is out there doing this. Well, wait a minute. Yes, I can.
Nothing surprises us anymore.
Kansas City University Assistant Professor of Primary Care, Dr. Nicole Fremarek, is back with us on the 9 o'clock show to unpack this myth and to explain that going without sunscreen, how can that possibly be a good thing?
You know, I think that's one thing with social media these days is we have to unpack, as perfect word, we have to figure out what is fact and what is fiction. And I think part of it is the idea that we're exposed to chemicals every day in what we breathe, what we do, cars, just getting on an airplane. And so I think that's where some of this is stemming from.
So is there science behind this?
So there are some studies that show the particular, so there's kind of, let me step back. There's a sunblock and sunscreen. There's two different types, kind of a chemical and a mineral-based sunscreens or sunblocks. In some of the chemicals that are used, in animal studies, they do show that they increase risk, have some increased risks. However, none of those studies have been done in those amounts or times of exposure or any of those pieces in humans. But what we do know is science is not using sunscreen increases risk of skin cancer.
Right.
So I think that's the big piece that's important to understand.
Yeah. I mean, how much sun can we safely get before it becomes risky? What do you think?
Absolutely. I would say about, 5 to 30 minutes, kind of gradually increasing that amount of exposure to prevent our risk of burns. And then trying to avoid those peak hours of the middle of the day. That 10 to 2, we all know well in Kansas City, can be a little muggy and warm. And so trying to avoid those outside hours, but kind of gradually increasing that and just a little bit of sun exposure each day is a good amount.
Yeah, and I know we always talk about sun exposure and the importance of vitamin D that comes with that. So could sunscreen kind of prevent us from getting the vitamin D that we need?
So not usually.
Okay.
So most of the time we actually get our vitamin D, so our greatest vitamin D source from the foods we eat and oral supplementation of that. So when we get sun exposure, to really block true any vitamin D exposure from the sun, you'd have to be completely lathered, doing it multiple times a day. Like it's just not realistic of what people are doing. So the amount of sunscreen on average someone is using is not going to block significant amounts of that vitamin D exposure.
I would imagine long-term exposure without sunscreen could be very damaging. What is our exposure if we don't use sunscreen for a long time?
Yeah, so if we don't use sunscreen on a regular basis, right, that's why we encourage it in our kids and our young adults. We know we can get aging signs, wrinkles, age spots, advance quicker. But then the scarier things, right, are all those different types of skin cancer. There are thousands of people diagnosed daily with skin cancer. And we know that melanoma, the scariest one of those ones most frequently talked about, is often most commonly caused by sun exposure. So, that's why we encourage it. Like I said at the beginning, those chemicals, we are exposed to chemicals every day. But what we know for a fact is sunscreen reduces our risk of getting sun cancers.
And what is it that you wish that people knew about these trends that we see on TikTok?
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest thing is research who's talking to you, right? We have some wonderful physicians who are on social media that have been on, big news stations and are heavy influencers. I would look to those people and then look to the journal articles, look to the organizations that give you that information in a safe, studied, organized way rather than just trusting the influencer in front of you.
Sure.
Yeah. I hope this is not a dumb question, but
No dumb question.
I'm just curious. It just occurred to me. Is there anything out there that is a natural sunblock, like a plant, an aloe leaf? Is there anything out there that's natural that you can do to prevent?
The age-old question, right?
Right.
So I think a lot of people have started to try to make their own sunscreens, which is not recommended because we don't know that those things that they're putting in it, if those are also harming their bodies in ways or helping them. And so, like I mentioned before, there's sunscreen, which is a little more of that chemical-based, versus sunblock is more of those mineral-based. So things like zinc oxide in them to help. So for someone who's really worried, that might be a good option.
I'm glad you reminded us about the two different ones because I had forgotten about that too.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely.
And you better believe when we're done here, I'm going to look and see what I just purchased and make sure I got the right one.
Yeah, exactly. So, Dr. Fremarek, great to see you again.
You as well.
Yes,
Appreciate
thank
your
you.
insight.